Welcome to the channel. My name is Amma. I want to thank you guys for tuning in on today. And today this message is specifically for those who are followers of Christ or followers of Ha Mashiach, particularly those and specifically those who are on the continent of Africa, or you know what, maybe you have left from someplace else and you are in transition to here or maybe somewhere else. I don't know how the Most High Yah is gathering you, but this message is for the gathered, all right, and those who are being gathered, and those who believe that they are the called who will be gathered, all right. And for many of us, you may be on the African continent, you may be making transition, going back and forth between wherever you are coming from. But in the process of things, this message is for you. And even after you arrive to your destination, this is for you. Right? And so for others, if this is not what you are interested in, then please tune back at another time. All right, so let's get into this. All right, the discussion today is no witches, necromancers, those who speak to the dead, those who have familiar spirits, those who are operating in another spirit that is not the spirit of Ha Mashiach. This message is to warn us who are followers of Christ to avoid such persons and not to become such persons, all right? And you may be that person and not be aware that you are, all right? And so I'm going to discuss this topic today briefly by just reading the word. All right, so I am going to be reading from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18, and I am going to start in verse 9. And this is coming from when the children of Israel, instruction to the children of Israel, when they come into the land that the Most High Yah had promised them. Verse 9 says, "When thou art come into the land which the Jehovah thy Elohim," so where it says Lord and God, I'll be using Jehovah and Elohim. All right, "When thou art come into the land which the Jehovah thy Elohim giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations." Okay, all right, so he says when you're coming into the land that I'm bringing you into, you shall not do, in the process of things, you shall not do after the customs, the ways, the abominations of those nations. Remember, nations are not just countries. Nations are people. There's a difference between a country and in a nation, all right? So when you come into those nations, do not do after the abomination of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, right? You may say, who's going to make their son and daughter pass through the fire? In other words, who's going to sacrifice their son and daughter? Well, I'm going to show you, or maybe I won't, I'll just tell you here, a man who is referred to as a diasporan or a returnee. He's Ghanaian. After spending time in the U.S., returned to Ghana, and what did he do? And this is recently. He tried to sacrifice his daughter because he says things were getting hard, all right? I may discuss that later, all right? And so things were difficult, and he consulted someone to assist him with sacrificing his daughter to improve his life, to get things going. All right, as Dr. Oz said, to get their mojo back. Dr. Oz says they realized that 3 to 5% of the children, would die from COVID, but they need to get the economy going and get their mojo back. Yeah. These are his real words, Dr. Oz. All right, but So there are people who are willing to sacrifice their children. But he says, there shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times. That means someone who looks after omens, someone who looks at the sky in one definition, and says, okay, the clouds are this color today, so this is going to happen. And Ha Mashiach spoke about it. He says you can discern the sky. You say, if the sky is red today, this is going to happen. If this happens, so and so. People who say, for example, I'm just exaggerating, but today the wall gecko leaped 3 times to the left. That means this is going to happen. And yesterday he leaped 3 times to the right, and this happened. Don't do this kind of stuff. The Most High is telling us, don't practice those things. He says, don't be an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits. Don't consult people who speak to the dead, and people who are soothsayers and fortune tellers and all these other people. He says don't consult with familiar spirits, or a wizard. But the next one is the one that I want to speak about, or a necromancer. And what is a necromancer? A necromancer is someone who says that they can speak to the dead, or that they speak to the dead, or they consult with people who speak to the dead. But a necromancer in particular is one who consults with their ancestors. They talk to their ancestors. They get information from their ancestors. They get information from dead people. They get advice from dead people. They get instructions from dead people. They get warnings from dead people. They speak to dead people on behalf of other people. They get messages and they send messages back and forth. The Most High Yah said there should not be any necromancers among his people. And so some of our people who are returning to the continent, and even some who are not there yet, are under the impression that they are speaking to those who have gone on. And if you are a follower of Christ, you know the word of Yah says the dead know nothing, for they rest from all of their labors. All right? They know nothing. They are sleeping. And so we are to avoid these things. Verse 12 goes on to say, for all that do these things are an abomination unto the Jehovah. And because of these abominations, the Jehovah thy Elohim doth drive them out from before you. People who do these things, Jehovah drives them out from before you. Thou shalt be perfect with the Jehovah thy Elohim. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for you, the Jehovah thy Elohim have not suffered, have not allowed you so to do, have not commanded you, has not commanded you to do such thing, has not permitted you to do this. So a warning to ourselves that, it's easy sometimes to get caught up in all of these phrases like, speaking to the ancestors. My ancestors have warned us. There's nothing wrong with saying things like, the sacrifices that our ancestors made, or thanking the Most High for giving them the strength, our ancestors, the strength to endure, the seeds that they have sown to prepare the way for us, the prayers that they have prayed that we would return one day, praying that, our ancestors will be resting in peace, acknowledging that we have ancestors. There's nothing wrong with that. But all of this communication and saying that we've talked to our ancestors and, ancestors are fighting, my ancestors are fighting against your ancestors, and my ancestors are leading me to the right and your ancestors are leading us to the left, and this is in the same household. This is the work of Hasatan. This is the work of Satan. This is the work of the strong delusion. This is the work of confusion. And the Most High Yah is not the author of confusion. All right? And we become deluded or under a strong delusion when we choose to reject truth. Because we did not love truth, the scripture says in Thessalonians, because they did not love the truth, Yah gave them up to strong delusions. All right? To believe these things and to fall for these tricks and for these familiar phrases. I mean, sometimes we just take things just a little bit too far. It's, we use terms we don't even really know what they mean. And not to say that the terms may be wrong, but do we really know what they mean? Especially on the internet. People will start saying things like grand rising. And some people I've seen in the comments, they're saying it, and then they will say another time, what does it mean? Because they don't even know. And so we can take things too far as sometimes, dissecting simple things. Somebody can say good morning, and you will say, I don't say good morning because I'm not mourning. Well, those are two different types. Are two different words. So, sometimes we can just be extra in our attempts to be correct, our attempts to be spiritual, our attempts to separate ourselves from our past experience with the other nations, with the nations that have oppressed us. Sometimes we, want to separate ourselves from their way of doing things, and we enter into things that we know not of. And we enter into things that are deceiving us. We enter into the delusions of the devil. We enter into the deceptions of the devil. We enter into those things that Hasatan, when I say Hasatan, I'm speaking of Satan, when he will lead us astray bit by bit. He doesn't lead you astray all at once. He leads you astray bit by bit. And sometimes it starts with things as simple as, or not so simple as, thinking that you are communicating with your ancestors. The next thing you know, you've opened up shop and become Miss Cleo. Okay? And you're communicating with the dead. You're taking money for communicating with the dead. You're giving advice and instructions, and your life is jacked up. Okay? How come your ancestors ain't telling you how to get yourself together? All right? Or maybe your life may be perfect. Nothing wrong with having a perfect life. All right? But at the end of the day, Satan has no friends. All right? Any gift that he gives you, any gift that comes from Satan with Hasatan, believe me, he'll give you what you want, but he'll take what you don't want to give. So, the warning to the followers of Ha Mashiach is to avoid all of these familiar spirits, speaking with the dead, consulting the dead, and such things. Follow the Ruach, the Spirit of Yah. He will not lead you astray. In fact, he will lead you and guide you into all truth. Shalom.